All right, I'm excited. It is Saturday. I just got my ECU back for my Chevy. I sent it away to have VATS removed, which is vehicle anti-theft system. That's gonna allow me to start the engine. And as you can see, it is in many pieces. So I got my chassis on the hoist here, vehicle tubs here, cabs here, motors here. Everything is pulled to pieces. I'm getting it ready for sandblasting and powder coating, but the ECU is back. So I'm gonna try and get this engine into here, spare battery, ECU, throw it all together, wire up a fuel system, get something happening, and I wanna see this thing run today. Wish me luck, stay tuned. Step one, done. Motor's in, sitting pretty in the chassis, bolted up, exhaust is bolted up. Got my loom that I've previously dodged up, trying to get it started, so it's obviously not gonna stay like that, but hey, I wanna see this thing run. So I've gotta work out some kind of makeshift fuel system, hook it up to the fuel rails, probably just a jerry can with a fuel pump in it. I think I've got a spare pump kicking around somewhere. See what happens. Alright, so the wiring is a little bit ghetto, but hey, I just want to see this thing start. Took me all of about 20 minutes, but that's pretty cool. Let's get a fuel system happening. Let's see if we can't get this bad boy running. Alright, so I've grabbed an old harness from a set of spotties or something that I had. Fused, it's got a switch on it. Basically just wired that to a fuel pump. I'll drop that straight in that red jerry can there and send it straight up to the fuel line. A bit dodgy, probably wouldn't do it around this wiring setup if I was you, but hey, I just want it running. Spare bit of braid, I might throw that one onto the return of the motor, down into the jerry. Just going to run essentially from the fuel pump up through the fuel rails and then back down to this jerry can. Hopefully it's enough to get her going. So I've swapped to a different jerry can because the opening wasn't big enough for the fuel pump, but fuel pump's in there, got it hooked up. This is a return line. I'll switch her on. We've got fuel pressure through the regulator on the fuel rail, which is good. Got everything else ready to go. All right, it's almost time to start. I'm super pumped. There's just one thing that I've got to do first. We've got the motor in the frame, got the fuel system hooked up, got some bodgy wiring going on, but I've hooked the exhaust up. There's one thing I've got to show you. Boom. Rear mount, twin 3071Rs. I haven't hooked up any oil system for them, so I'm gonna be removing these if this thing starts. But what I'm gonna do is just grab this oil can here, I'm gonna pump a bit of oil into them. I'm gonna see if I can get this thing fired over, then I'm gonna go ahead and blow these off. So thought I'd do something sneaky for the back of this build. Tub floor will pop up. That's all you'll see. Neat little set of rear mount twin turbos. So Started doing the intercooler piping. I've mapped out all the mounts for the scavenge pump and the little sump that I'm going to run to oil drain into that. I've got a watered air intercooler mount on the chassis. Started getting it ready to go. Just got to finish those few things up before powder coating. But now that I've got my ECU, let's get this thing running. Alright, it's not starting. We don't have injector pulse. I'm trying to figure it out. I thought it was the gearbox not being in park, but that doesn't seem to change it. I have got power to injectors, but I can't figure that out. So I'm gonna go get a proper wiring diagram, download that. But she runs on starter fluid, so I'm gonna give that a quick squirt and see if it'll run longer than all of a second. So I'll try that, see what happens. Won't run on fuel. Starting most stuff on.
That's fucking exciting.
Fucking keen. It's not working for me today. I am pretty sure I jumped the gun a little bit. I fixed up a few things in the wiring. There was 2 wires that I'd missed, which was good news. However, I still don't have the injectors working. So I'm gonna pull the coil packs off, pull the injectors out. I'm gonna bench test them, see if they're actually seized or if it's ECU firing. I am getting a small signal from the ECU on a Noid light, so that's good news. So I'm gonna rip the injectors out and check those. But first, the fuel I'm using is super old. I'm gonna shoot down the servo, get some fresh fuel, get it going. All right, while I got this off, I've ripped the plugs out, taking the coils off. I'm just gonna pull this rocker cover off just to see if we've got oil in the top of the cylinder head there. All right, we do. Nice fresh clean oil in there, which is perfect. That's what we want to see, pumped up from the bottom all the way up into the heads, out the push rods, lubricating all of the valve train. So that's good to see, just from cranking, that we got a bit of oil up into the top of the engine. All right, now we can get the injectors out and see what is going on. So I've got a second battery here, which basically just jump some wires onto it. The plan is to check all of these and make sure that they're actually firing and that they're working still, they're not corroded or seized up at all. There we go. All right. Grab our wires here. Just check that they're working. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't sound or there we go. I don't know if you can see the fuel, but it's actually going down in the injector now. You can hear it clicking. That was not doing that before. So my guess is maybe it was a little bit, there we go. Maybe it just needed a bit of a jump start. You can see that fuel disappearing down the top into the cylinder. They didn't sound too good, like you could barely hear them. But now, well, you see that one's not really doing anything. Just needs a little bit of a jump start. There we go. Nice and consistent now. Must have just been slightly seized. Lucky I have spare LS3 injectors if I need them. They all sound pretty good now. That's good. Alright, let's get some fresh fuel in it. Get all this plugged back up and bolted back on. And let's give it another hit. I've got the fresh fuel. I've just pulled the injectors out of one side. I've checked they'll work. I'm hoping. It kind of seemed that they were just a little bit stuck. Some of them weren't actually triggering till I put a hard 12 volts on it a handful of times. Seemed to just kind of break them loose. All 8 seem to be cycling now, so I'm hoping for the best on the injector side of it. But before I put the spark plugs back in and give it a crank, I did drop a bit of fuel in the cylinders when I was testing the injectors, so I'm just going to go ahead and wind it over a handful of times before we hit the key and crank her up. Alright, this is my dodgy fuel system with fresh fuel. Would not recommend doing this. Drop that in there. Your return line. Down here I've got a little switch somewhere. Good to go. Alright. There's oil in the heads, fresh fuel in it, injectors work, spark plugs are back in. Come on, baby. Don't let me down. Why are you not working? This doesn't work. I'm giving up. I'm having a beer. Come on, baby. Oh, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Almost. Almost. What are you doing to me? Yep. Okay. Fuel pump. Oh, come on, baby. Yes, alright, so it does work, it's not just, yes.
So
yeah, I'm stoked. I don't even care if fuel goes on the floor. Winner, winner! Off the paint. Alright. Okay. Doesn't matter. I'm happy. Starter control, relay, trigger wire from the ECU, that's what it was. I wired it through this little bulb because the ECU didn't know that it was trying to start. Because I'm just jump starting it straight from the battery to the starter motor. So, yeah, dumbass. That's alright, we got there in the end. A couple of hours of wiring, and I really shouldn't have just done this mess and loom on loom that I've been using. I should have just done what I usually do and cut it all back, strip the entire loom, work out pinouts from the ECU all the way to where it needs to go. But hey, it's in, it's started, and I've got to pull it all apart anyway now to get it painted, but also strip the entire loom because the ECU and all the control and inputs from power and negative are going to be on the other side of the motor feeding through the firewall, so it's all hidden, not at the front like the Commodore. So I do have a bit of work to do, but very, very happy it runs. Turbo sounds sick. Probably shouldn't have been running them like that. Been pumping oil into the cartridge from the top with an oil can every time I try and start it, so I've got heaps of oil on the floor, but it only ran for a couple of seconds, so I'm hoping it hasn't hurt the turbo cartridges, but sounds cool. I'm very happy it's running. Never heard it run before, so it's time for a beer.